Can someone let me know in the chat if you can hear me? Okay, you can hear me? Okay. Sorry about that. I finally was able to do it on my phone. So you're getting better quality here. Okay. Okay, so we're going to start over. I know I'm super late with the video today, but it dropped in my spirit to make a dessert, unleavened dessert with chickpea flour. And as I was stating before, in my belief, we keep unleavened bread, which is to not have anything that makes bread or doughs rise. So that's yeast, baking soda, baking powder, all variations, even sparkling water. Anything that would make a dough rise, we observe this for a week, and we don't have anything that makes other food rise. So I've made this recipe outside of unleavened bread, so I thought it'd be a good idea to make it while observing unleavened bread. So we have chickpea flour here, and we're going to make chickpea flour cookies. And we're making two different kinds, one chocolate chip and one with dates and cinnamon. So like I was saying before, I have about a cup of chickpea flour in each of these bowls. I usually don't measure for this recipe, but I know a lot of people like to have measurements. I was the same way, especially when you're making a new recipe, so I definitely understand. And I have avocado oil. Now, I'm going to pour this in there until it makes the consistency that I think is good, which should be about 1/3 of a cup. I'm going to go ahead and put a little splash of vanilla. You all probably heard me say before that chickpea is definitely an ancient ingredient. I think it's about 7,500 years old. So it is definitely a part of the ancient kitchen repertoire. And it's a very good recipe to have if you're gluten sensitive, because there's no gluten in this. And when you cook chickpeas, it removes the chickpea flavor from it. You don't want to try this batter raw, because all you're going to taste is raw chickpeas, and it's not that good. But once it's cooked, all of that cooks out, and it's so delicious. Chickpea is also high in fiber, high in protein. It is a complex carbohydrate, meaning that when our body eats it, it does not immediately go into the bloodstream as sugar and raises your blood sugar. Instead, it takes a while for our body to digest it, and that gives our body spurts of energy for a few hours. So this is a nutritious cookie recipe. So this is about the consistency you want. Similar to how we did the other day with the einkorn. Now, I'm noticing that there's not enough flour. Shalom! Hey, everybody's up! I'm not going to be before y'all too long. I know it's late, but I just wanted to make this recipe. This recipe is also plant-based. There's not going to be any eggs, I don't think you usually use milk, but there's no milk. So I'm just going to stir it up. And I like these kind of recipes because it's more fluid when you use a flour outside of wheat. You got to be really careful with wheat. We're making chickpea flour cookies. Another unleavened bread dessert substitute, because we're not going to use any leaven. then I'm going to show y'all pictures later. We made some unleavened pizza. I got the idea from Mora, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's genius. So we had that for dinner. Okay, that's good. So this is what you want. It's malleable, pliable. You want to be able to roll it. Okay? So now, oh, one thing I need. Almost forgot the agave. So I'm gonna probably have to add more flour. Let's see. This is gonna make it sweet. I'm using agave nectar to sweeten the cookies, because I'm sure some of you may heard I am gonna make one of these chocolate chip. Now, hear me out. I've been on a mission to make my own chocolate chips, and I'm still on the pathway for that. I'm not gonna say it's a failure. It just, every time I make it, it doesn't stay solid. And I end up having a pool of chocolate inside of a cookie. So I really wanted to show y'all an alternative for chocolate chip cookies without that many ingredients. So that's what we're doing tonight. Now, these chocolate chips I'm using, they don't have peanuts, no type of nut, egg, milk, wheat, soy, shellfish. I don't know why you would have shellfish in chocolate, but no shellfish, and no sesame. So free from all the major allergens. And it's organic chocolate, organic cane sugar, organic cocoa butter. And it's about 5 grams of sugar per 1 tablespoon. So for this amount of dough, I'm probably going to use about 1 tablespoon. So portion is important with this. If you're dealing with anything like diabetes, if you have really bad sugar cravings and are not able to tame yourself, I wouldn't recommend doing this recipe. This is seriously once in a blue moon. I don't even remember the last time I bought this brand, but I really wanted to show you all for this recipe. So I'm going to add a little bit more flour. Since I added the agave, it made it wet. Just sprinkle that and stir it up. Again, we want the dough sticky. We want to be able to handle it. And you can test it out by grabbing one and rolling it. If you can roll it into a ball like that, it's good. All right. Give me one moment. Sorry, everyone. I need to turn down the TV. Okay. I wish y'all knew how many times I've been unsuccessful making chocolate. Because it always melts. It melts too much. And this particular chocolate has cocoa butter in it. I'm not sure where to find cocoa butter. I don't know where. They must have a monopoly on cocoa butter. You may want to measure this. Make sure you're not putting too much chocolate in. I shook it up. That's probably like 1/3 of a cup. And mix it all in. this is also dark chocolate too. So there's more cocoa in it. Look at that. You wouldn't even know. Regular dough. Okay. So I'm gonna get a pan. And we're gonna do the same thing with the other batter. We're just gonna use dates instead of chocolate. And trust me, it tastes so good. We've had to use dates because I've been on a hiatus from chocolate. And that's mainly because the purest form of chocolate comes from the cacao powder, well, the cacao nib, and you can get it in a powder form. I personally have not been able to find chocolate too often made with cacao and sweetened good enough. I'll usually see cocoa, but not cacao. So I've gotten cacao powder and made chocolate sauce, but I really wanted chocolate chips. So we're going to do chocolate chips. And scoop that about a spoonful. Roll it up. No baking powder, baking soda needed. And chickpea acts like a egg in the plant world. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio for most recipes, but it can be very similar to as if you're using egg whites. And I'm not making too many of these chocolate ones for obvious reasons. Okay. I can't wait to show y'all the pizza. It literally took me 25 minutes. And that was to make the dough, put the toppings on. I actually made a topping as well. I made pesto all in 20 minutes. So these are healthy recipes for the average person, and it's not going to take too long. That's what we want to show, is that while we should be cooking, it doesn't always have to take forever. Okay, so I like to sprinkle a little bit of salt on my cookies when they're done or right before I bake them. And I put these in the oven. Rule of thumb when baking, when you smell it, it's done. Got that from my Mama Judy. Shout out Mama Judy. That rule has not failed yet. All right, so we're going to work on the second batch. Same thing, chickpea flour, some oil, splash of vanilla. And I'm going to remember the agave this time. Okay, I'm going to need a little bit more. Right back. Yes, you can use sweetener other than agave. I will say, there's been times where I didn't have agave, so I used coconut sugar. Coconut sugar is tricky. I can't front. It's tricky. It ends up for me being very crumbly and very gritty when I'm done. So that's the unfortunate part about using that. You can use maple syrup. Maple syrup, however, does have a higher glycemic index. That just means it makes your blood sugar go up. It is natural, but it does have a higher index. Let me think. Other than agave and other than white sugar, I've heard of beet sugar. I'm not sure where you can purchase it, and I've never used it, but I have seen more healthier recipes use beet sugar because beets are naturally sweet. You probably really need a lot of beet sugar for it to get really sweet though. You can use date sugar and date syrup. I've only used date syrup a handful of times, but that should be perfect for a recipe like this. Again, you might need more, way more than you would need agave, because agave is really, really sweet. Great question. So with this one, I'm just slicing up the dates. I've used this as a chocolate chip replacement before, and it looks just like chocolate chips. And it tastes delicious. It doesn't have that bitterness that chocolate has, but it's so good. And then I add cinnamon to it, and it ends up tasting like a honey bun. Or no, a cinnamon bun cookie. So good. So sprinkle that in there. I probably did about a teaspoon and a half. And stir it up. Let me put some salt in there. I like to add salt. You're probably going to find that you always add salt to a dessert recipe because it brings out the sweetness. And I personally love recipes where I don't have to measure. It just makes it go by so much quicker. And since we're not using leaven, you don't have to have it precise. It's very fluid and still delicious. I smell my food to see if it has enough of what I need. Because I tell you, with the chickpea, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to taste the batter. It's not going to taste good. My dad teases me because I use chickpeas for almost everything. So I'm going to add a little bit more of the flour because it's still wet. Like, this is not going to be that good to mold with. You want it to be a little bit more solidified. So I'm going to add a little bit more flour. And you'll find that you need to be conscious on how much flour you're adding because you might have to add more sweetener. I've found that to be true in the past. Add a little bit more agave. Also, I love that this is a nutritious dessert. It's not empty calories like you would get with your traditional cookie. This is going to give you good carbs, protein, nutrition. This is like a good pre-workout too. Lots of energy. I'm going to check on the other ones. Okay. Now you may find, because we're not using any leaven, when it's halfway through baking, you might have to get a fork and smash it a little bit so that it spreads. I might have to do that with the first batch. Okay. Perfect. gonna get another pan. I also like to line all my pans that are not cast iron or stainless steel with parchment paper so that the metal that this is made out of doesn't seep into my food. Just a little tidbit. This is a barrier. So if you have anything that's made out of aluminum, and I can't remember the main metal or main material that a lot of pans use, but I think it's mostly aluminum. You can line it up with parchment paper and that'll block the toxic metals from coming in. So let's test the dough. Perfect. A good guilt-free treat. Nutritious treat. This is not going to clog the bowels either. That's very important to me. That first batch I think yielded about 6 cookies. So this looks like it's going to be about the same, which is plenty. This one I don't sprinkle salt on top. Just leave it as is. This one just a big giant one. Initially I used a cup, but I sprinkled a little bit more in each one, so it might have been 1.5 cups. You have to play with it to get the texture you want, but I started off with 1 cup of flour, and then however much you need after you add agave, because agave is wet, vanilla's wet, so you might have to add a little bit more in order for it to come together as these dough balls. All right, going in the oven. I'm gonna check on the other ones. They look so pretty. Yeah, so see what I mean? They didn't flatten. There's no egg, there's no leaven to help it spread out. It's plant-based and unleavened. So what I'm gonna do is just take a fork and smash it just slightly, so that way we can make sure it cooks evenly. Can you all see that? So we smashed it. We're gonna give it about probably 2 more minutes. And that is it. That is all. How long was this live? Okay, 27 minutes. But it's not going to take you that long to make this, I promise. It's super easy, super quick. You don't notice I didn't use a food processor. I didn't use a whisk. Nothing technical. I used a spoon and my ingredients. So no excuses with this one. You don't even need a measuring cup, to be honest. You just pour some flour in there and the oil and mix it together to see if you get a ball. I really like impromptu, not so tedious desserts because, like I said, it can be a lot of measuring and not everybody wants to invest that much time. So this is a great alternative, an ancient-minded alternative, a nutritious alternative, and you can enjoy it at any point in your life. If you keep the Passover and unleavened bread like we do, this is a great dessert for you to have and still honor that as well. So I just want to thank you all for coming, joining the live. I know it was super late, but I just appreciate your support and streaming again, and there will be more better and better videos for us to all get inspired and get in the kitchen the ancient way. Y'all have a great night.